Oh man, am I ever excited for this. This is something I've wanted for months and months, and I finally obtained, and I finally got some time off from work there. And here we go, we're gonna get this installed today. And this is the Heeltech GI Pro 8er and G2, which is the gear indicator pro with the advanced timing retard eliminator. So I got my gear indicator here routed up to the front. And now I was just trying to figure out placement. And I started with thinking maybe, on the tack here in that unused space, but it just looks terrible and the wire dangling down. Then I thought to myself, maybe, across here, something like that. But with having to look down the road, it's not unreasonable to glance down, just quick glance to get some information about what's going on. But to look all the way down here would be, pretty distracting, right? So and then I was thinking to myself how perfect it would be if I could get it just about there. And then I've got my tack, I've got my speedo, and then my gear. But the only thing is obviously with there not being much of anything here, I can't attach it easily. So what I did was I cut a L piece out of an old toolbox I have, or a toolbox tray I should say, that I'm not using anymore. And so I'm going to be plastic gluing this piece on top, and then that gives me a nice flat surface to get my gear indicator in there, and then I can run the wire through this gap right here nicely. And so I think that's going to be great. We'll see how it goes. So right here, as you saw, it was a flat surface with an L almost at the other end, but really to get a really good seat on that, I was hoping to have basically two surfaces, so one here gluing and then this gluing so that it sits right on top of the console nicely. So what I did was I took my torch here and then heated this up a little bit, and then took my pliers and bent it over, so now I've got a second surface to help adhere it in there much more nicely. So as you saw there, I took my torch to that, and then you can see the plier mark still in it. So I bent that piece over so that it'll sit up nice and flat from behind there, so that it's got two surfaces to glue from. And then I cut that other L off, it was too high, so I was trying to cut it down to the size of the gear indicator there. So it'll sit about there. The gear indicator will adhere to that surface there, and then I'm going to super glue this over there. So it's not adhered yet, but that's not looking bad, eh? Like right in the middle. And so I got the gear indicator adhered to the surface there nice and clean. It's made a good contact, not coming off. So I'm really impressed with the Heeltech gear indicator so far. It's intuitive, you just got to touch the screen to go through the menu options. It's small, but yet feature packed. It's very high-end build quality, like the rubber and plastic materials. It's encased in epoxy, so it's waterproof. So it's fantastic overall. Even the speaking on the build quality, these connectors are great. The wiring's fantastic. But my only complaint, and it's a pretty big complaint honestly, is the power wire. I mean, it starts here and it ends here, so I feel like a super slut in college, honestly. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with 8 inches? I mean, I grabbed my multimeter there, and all of the connections down in here are 5-volt sources, or just not really accessible. And the nearest 12-volt source here is either the diagnostic connector with the wires back here, or the brake line. And again, I can't run it off the battery because this would be on all the time, so I have to run it off of a relayed source. So I don't know, I feel like this is a pretty glaring issue considering it's a $260 device, and I can't run it to anything, so I have to grab my wires, my connectors, solder, do what I have to do to extend this wire to be able to get it to a 12-volt source. If you're going to be getting this, make sure that you've got a 12-volt source near your connector, or just be prepared to have to extend the wire yourself. So, got my spade connector on the gear indicator power wire. It's on there solid. And then I fished this connector out from in hiding there. and it looked like it went up to the brake lights, but it's never good to assume. And so I grabbed my multimeter, and the one on the left, the black with a white stripe wire, is ground. The center red brownish wire is a constant 12-volt source, and the one on the right, the white wire with a black stripe, it only gets 12 volts whenever I depress the brake lever. What I'm going to be doing is splicing into the center wire with the speaker wire I grabbed, and then I will run that to a female spade connector and then connect these sort of in the middle here. And that should give me a switched 12-volt source that only comes on when the bike ignition is on. Yeah, no, it just didn't work. I got him in there, pinched it, and then did it a few times, but the metal piece just kept flying out, and then eventually I gave it a good squeeze, and it just kind of came out sideways and broke the plastic on this. So I don't know if this is just cheap plastic or what, but honestly, I couldn't get this working. So as you saw there, that little splice I had kind of broke. It is what it is. So I've just decided to solder the connection instead. It's honestly just easier at this point. So what I did was I took a fine point on my box cutter here and cut a chunk out of the insulation on the wire, which you can see here. So I'm just going to solder it instead, and then I've got this paper towel here to help catch some of the splatter. So got my soldering station, my rosin core, my wire, and yeah, here's hoping it goes well. So I got the soldering done, my little tinfoil ball looking thing here. It's in there solid, it's not budging. All of the copper's coated, so hopefully that alleviates any kind of oxidization on it and anything like that. So it's all good. Then I plugged the connection in and turn the ignition on, and the display actually lights up on the gear indicator. So that's exciting to think that after all this, it does in fact work. I got it going, and the intrusive surgery there, so well worth it since I got it going. So I'm really happy with the end result, honestly. It's really clean. Again, just off over to the side again. No loose wires, nothing like that. So I've routed it down through here over to the connectors for the gear indicator, and then I've just zip tied off the excess wire there. So really clean in my opinion, looks good. And boom. One functioning gear indicator. So what I'll be doing next is spraying down the surfaces. I'm going to be gluing with some ethanol, wiping it down, make sure there's no crap or oils or anything like that. And then using my hair dryer here to help heat up the surfaces so as to help the glue adhesion process, help it cure a bit faster, or at all. You know, I've seen some glues that just don't work in cold weather. It's the end of winter, but it's still really cold, so yeah, get that cleaned up, heated, and glued, and hopefully it's glued in the right spot, and I have no regrets, so here we go. Oh man, I was nervous getting that on, but looks good. It's in there solid. No, it's not budging. You can see the dash move with it, so it's on there good. There's a couple instances there where I got a little nervous, but yeah, I've finished, and man, oh man, does that look good. There's a bit of that plastic protective layer, but I'm not going to take that off yet. So but yeah, wow, that's awesome. So just to go over it once more, I've got my wires soldered into the brake power line there, then routed, I feel, pretty cleanly down the side here over to the harness. Got these all done up and then organized and then zip tied off so they're not flailing around and touching stuff that they shouldn't, like the block. And I've got the gear indicator over through here, and then the wire comes up through there, below here, up to the gear indicator that is nicely, snugly holding on there. So, ooh, oh yeah, oh yeah, it's looking good. So here's my POV of it, like a rider's view. So I'm sitting on my bike here and I'm holding it at eye level. So again, once I'm hunched over, honestly, I don't think there's anything I could have done differently to make this go better. You know, I mean, other than if the, you know, the splice and the wire was to length and everything like that. So other than the product having a couple setbacks, you know, actually installing it went perfectly. It's great.